Hi everybody, so I'm back from outside in my walk on the Peace Path, and I'm here in my art studio again. And I want to talk a little bit about my intention today for the Zendoodle tutorial. Last week it was the 50th anniversary of the celebration of Earth Day, and it was a wonderful opportunity to recall the celebration's 50 years of recognizing the earth and our need to care for all of our natural resources, reminders of all of the species on the planet and those that are endangered. Any way that you had hopefully acknowledged and celebrated Earth Day. And whether or not it's Earth Day officially on the calendar, every day really is Earth Day. Every day gives us an opportunity to think about the resources that we use every day, water and electricity, and every day gives us an opportunity to be grateful for the miraculous abundance of beauty that is around us in the trees and in the flowers and in the animals that inhabit our planet. So today's intention is simply for the earth. So this is a sample of what we're going to be working on today. It's kind of an abstract, earth-looking, globe-looking Zendoodle. And it looks kind of complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. The hardest part is setting up the grid, which I will show you how to do pretty simply. And then once the grid is in place, it really is a great Zen pattern because it takes quite a lot of time to do all the black and to do the coloring so that you really can quiet your mind and get into a prayerful state by doing this tile once your grid is set up. So we recall that our first step of our creative spiritual process is establishing our space. So I have my space and my materials ready to go, and I have my candle here that I want to help me, remind me to keep me focused in my intention, which I've already shared with you is for the earth. So to start, I'm going to use a 4x4 piece of paper. You can use whatever size you want. I'm using a 4x4 because in order to make a circle, you might have something fancy like this that has circle shapes that you can trace. However, if you don't have anything fancy like that, I found something that I did have at home that you probably have at home, and it's a yogurt cup. Right there in the square 4x4 paper, and tracing it gives me this wonderful circle. And you could use anything circular, a glass, a mug, but I found this yogurt cup was a perfect size. So that was part of the setup and the prep. You'll also need a pencil, your pen, and a ruler. Definitely need a ruler, and unless you are like really good at drawing straight lines, which I'm not, and you might want to get yourself some colored pencils or markers to color in later. So that's our prep and setup. And just take a moment to pause and think about Mother Earth and all of the lovely creation that is abundant and beautiful. And so we can begin our artistic process. So I've already made my circle, which you can do. And then I take the ruler and as best as you can, unless you really want to measure, but I just kind of eyeball, and just gently draw a line halfway, one way, and halfway the other. I want to make sure that I'm on camera here. and you're kind of making 4 quarters. Eyeball it as best you can. Oops, what happened? There we go. Ta-da. So now you're going to make freehand sort of an arch. I'm going to arc this circle from one end to the other. And we're going to do that again, twice on each side of the line. And then do it the other way. And they don't have to be perfectly sized little squares that are forming. It's just an approximation. So when you're done, it should look something like this. Now, taking your pencil, we're going to go into each little section here, if you will, and just kind of create a tracing of it, but you want to round the edges. And they don't, again, they don't have to be exactly perfect, but you kind of want to go into each little section and you're kind of mimicking the shape but rounding the corners. And they don't have to be exactly perfect because you can form the shape a little more clearly when you start using the marker and filling it in. And when you get to these edges, the shapes might be a little less square and a little more triangular. And that's, again, it's okay, just rounding your edges. You can think about these maybe as like little islands on the earth or little continents. I don't know. Let your imagination run wild as you recall our intention, holding all of creation, and mindful of our presence on the earth, mindful that we too are part of God's creation. I wanted to say one other thing about creating your space. When I watched the last video, I could hear my clock ticking in the background here in my art room. And usually when I'm working alone and not videoing, I have soft music playing in the background. I like to listen to classical music. So it was kind of funny listening to the video and hearing the clock ticking there in the back, but that's kind of nice too. You could play music or sit in quiet, whatever works for you. Well, I apologize. I didn't realize that the tile got off camera there for the last couple of sections, but you get the idea. I think you were following along hopefully pretty well. So this is what your grid will look like when it's finished. And now really you can just take your time and start coloring in the in-between and just kind of tracing around your shapes, and that's what you want to leave white And you want to color in all the area around. You can start to trace the outer circle. And I'm just going to do one little section here so you can see how to do this. And then you can continue. Now this is where I was saying if the shape isn't exactly what you want it to be, this is where you can use your marker, your pen, to really define that white shape. And go slow. You don't want to go too quickly because you don't want to color in where you don't want it. Really just take your time and breathe and recall our intention. Always bringing back to our mind the earth, the abundance of life, all of creation. And how lucky we are to live on this beautiful planet. So I'm finishing up the last bits of my coloring in here, and I wanted to show you that this is where you can really, reshape your original shapes. If your original pencil mark doesn't fit where you want your shape to be right now, that's okay. You can go back and erase that or just color over it later with your colored pencils. So now I'm just going to take a pause. Look at what I've done so far. And now to color it in, I'm using some colored pencils, and I'm going to kind of do a blending. I wanted some green and blue kind of earth and watercolors. And when you're blending, now you can do it, again, any way you want. There's no right or wrong. You could color in everything the same color. You could color each one solid, a different color. You can blend like I'm doing. You could use other colors, shades, reds, shades of yellows and oranges, whatever you want. This is what I'm doing. And I'm going to shade each square similar. And you want to start with the lightest color. So I'm going to start out with this lightest green, and I'm just kind of laying down a light coloring of color. And I'm only going to do a few just as a demonstration. And then I take up my next darkest color, and I just kind of color part of like 3/4 of the way, so I leave some of that original color to show through. And again, this is just the way I've done it, and I've watched a few shading and coloring videos on YouTube that taught me this technique. You may have your own technique. You may be inspired to do something different. And I take the next shade, just kind of do a little bit down this way. So you see kind of like gradiates, light to dark. That's kind of the effect I'm going for. And then I use the blue just at the very edge. Just as a little pop of And then what I like to usually do is go back with the first color, the lightest one, and just kind of color over the whole thing. And that's when the colors really start to blend. So there is what I've done, and you can get creative and do it your own way. So I'm going to finish that later, but I'll show you again what a finished one looks like with that technique. This is one that I did just for fun. I tried with a couple of different, instead of doing the grid, I just kind of did abstract shapes. And that was kind of fun. So that is there. And what do we always do at the end of our work? We claim it as our own, like most good artists. So I'm going to add my initials here. And now I pause and I look at it and I say, wow, look at that piece of beauty that never existed in the world before. There it is. And am I grateful for this time, for this opportunity to sit in prayer for this hour and be with all of you in this time.